now, but I don't think anybody that missed much. So I'm hitting record. And thank you to the person that reminded me. And as for Sandy, you're going to have to like maybe turn up your, I think everybody else can hear. So it has to be something on your end to try to fix. And you can always go back, Sandy, and dial in on the phone in one of those links and listen while you're watching as well.
All right. I'm not muted, right? All right. So as I was saying, this is a honing steel. So what this does is this helps to keep your knife sharp, meaning if it's already been sharpened, this prolongs the life. So I typically recommend using a honing steel prior to use, like maybe before you start chopping your vegetables, start working in your kitchen. This is always a great way to start and kind of prep your knife. This helps keep your knife sharp. But if your knife is already dull, and some of you, may have that issue, I'm so glad you gave them a source. And so that you all know, $2 a knife is a very reasonable price for them to do that for you. I mean, that is not something that is just done in a snap. And so for him to do that for $2, that is a great price for Pendleton County. What I recommend, if you wanted to do this yourself, this is called a bench stone. This is pre-oiled. It is something you can easily get at, say, Amazon, and you can order this. And as I've said it many times, but steel and stone have been used together to sharpen blades forever. So that's really all it is you're using this stone to sharpen your blade, but it's been pre-oiled, so you don't have to really do anything to it. You can take it out of the box when you need it, and then you have it for use. There's always a coarse side and there's a fine side. So the coarse side helps to get little nicks, out of your blade. Say, for instance, if you've, chopped something or you dropped it and you've, got a little nick there. But as it gets dull, you have to go back onto that stone to really sharpen your blade. So as you sharpen your blade on a stone, it's always kind of this 35 to 40 degree angle. And the reason I mentioned how the knife is two blades that are forged together, when you're sharpening and when you're honing your knife, you always want to do the same strokes on both sides. So if I do 10 strokes on the right side, I'm going to do 10 strokes on the left side, because again, it's two blades together. So you don't want to have any kind of warping effects over time on your knife. So that's really important to remember. Always do the same number on each side. So you just take it from the bottom of the blade to the top of the blade and just run it straight across, kind of at a flat, 40, 5 to 35 degree angle. And that will sharpen your knife. From the coarse side, then you would go to the fine side, and that just smooths everything out before you're ready to use. And ideally, I would say every time you sharpen it, I would probably go maybe 25 times on both sides of the blade. So that would be kind of an ideal way to start. This is something, like I said, very inexpensive, and this is really how we sharpen our knives here in the store, and it does the job. The other thing I want to mention, when I said a German carbon stainless steel, these are not cheap knives. I do know that this is an investment, but when you do invest in a good quality knife, it should last you for years. Most of the knives that I have in the store, I've had since we opened the store, and that's been 10 years of a lot of use. Every day, different classes, different people using them. We sharpen them and we continue to use them over and over and over. So if you get a good quality knife, you really shouldn't have to replace that if you're sharpening it and honing it and keeping it, taking good care of it. I don't recommend doing a dishwasher with any of these knives. I always hand wash and then let dry. I do think like sometimes the heat and the dishwasher can kind of disrupt your blade. So I don't recommend using a dishwasher on them either. I think that's kind of the, basics on just the wear and tear and care of your knife. There are 4 knives that I recommend starting with as far as your initial investment. Obviously, this is going to be the first one, and I hope most of you you have one of these available, because that's what I'm going to be demonstrating and showing the majority of our knife skills on today. The second knife that I recommend to invest in, always maybe having a good paring knife, because there are certain tasks, like perhaps when we get to the orange, things that are smaller that might, you have better grip with a paring knife. I know a lot of us around here, my grandmother always peeled that apple with that paring knife, right? So a good paring knife is always a great tool. The third knife is a great bread knife or a serrated blade. So those are your top three. Then from there, and a serrated knife, again, one of those that should last you forever. Once you get a good one, you really shouldn't have to do anything to this. You shouldn't even have to really sharpen it because of that serrated edge. The fourth one would be what's considered a boning knife or a fillet knife. And that is for like taking the skin off of a fish. And then this is the knife that I would use perhaps with working with the chicken. You can still use your chef's knife for that, but sometimes this is a little bit easier working through those joints or working through, those tight spaces. So those are my top four knives. Again, you've got a sheet that goes over a lot more, but those would be the first four that I would, spend my money on, and then you could go from there. But those should get the job done majority of the time. All right. So any questions on knives, knife safety? That's where we're going to go to next before we get started, but on just the wear, tear, care of knives, or I think there's one other question that I get a lot of times. This is a chef's knife, but a lot of people sometimes have that Sentoku knife that has the ridges on the side and it's more of a straight blade. That also can be considered a chef's knife. I use that a lot as well. The Sentoku, having those edges, those grooves on the edges, is just designed to help when items stick to the side of the blade. The grooves are supposed to help things fall off. Stuff still sticks to the blade, but that also is another form of a chef's knife. There's different sizes also, so you find what works well for you. Most common is going to be this, which is like an 8-inch. I also sell cook's knives that are 6 inches. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking for a good knife, usually the handle and the length of the blade are balanced in weight, and you should be able to balance that. I like a nice lightweight, but again, those are things that you find that you feel most comfortable with as you get more familiar with using a knife. So any questions on just the knives in general before we get into just kind of proper holding and knife safety?
Remember, if you have questions, you're muted, or write them in the chat. So if you have a question, you have to unmute yourself to ask. And if nobody asks any questions or writes anything in the chat, Allison's going to move on.
And if this works and if I'm going too fast, let me know, but I'll just kind of start with a topic, start with certain things, then we'll stop, give a chance for questioning. And if we need to recover or go over any certain cuts as we go, we'll do that. All right, so on knife safety, there's two kind of proper ways of holding the chef's knife. First of all, I had this habit, and I know there's a lot of you out there, you can go ahead and just own it, but I had this habit forever, is every time I would use the knife, I'd have my index finger out and I would point towards whatever it was I was cutting. Well, we want to try to get rid of that. So all of your fingers actually need to be underneath where you're gripping the handle. Notice my thumb is almost like parallel with the knife itself. So your fingers all need to be under. Now I feel more comfortable holding my knife up on what's considered the bolster. And I think you have a sheet that just goes over the anatomy of the knife as well. So this is considered the spine. This is considered the bolster, and then your handle. So I typically hold my knife a little bit closer up on the bolster, but you can also hold it back on the handle. So it's really just where that knife feels most comfortable for you. But I always want to encourage you to keep those fingers underneath. By gripping your knife, you have you have a stronger grip. When you release that index finger, you weaken your grip on your knife, and it kind of weakens the wrist. So having a strong grip on your knife is key, because when you start slicing and you start working with that knife, you want to have as strong a grip on there as possible so that the knife goes exactly where you want it to. And what happens when I see the finger pointing happening, watch my knife, you'll go down, but then at the end, you'll kind of do this. So you'll end up with a thick cut at the top and a thin cut at the bottom, where you're almost kind of curling out. So when you have that stronger grip, it tends to go straight down, and you have more of that, placement on your knife from start to finish. All right. So chopping and dicing is really a rhythm, right? It's a rhythm. So I typically, when we're chopping, we want to try to keep our nose, this tip of the knife, on the board at all times. It's not raising it up and chopping like this. It's a slicing motion forward. So I almost am just transferring weight from the front of the knife to the back of the knife. So I'll kind of go from the side here so you can see, but it's just slicing forward and then pulling back. And then it just becomes this rhythm. I'm not raising the knife up off the board. I'm just kind of transferring that weight from the back up. And then I'm slicing down, and it's almost kind of like a click. As you get into that rhythm, you almost hear the back of that knife hit the board, and it just clicks. I don't know if you can hear that because that's really quiet, but you can get the feel of that. I used to use that analogy of, think of it as an airplane coming in for a landing, and then you reset, but then someone corrected me, and the airplanes apparently land back wheels, front wheels. So it screwed up my imagery, but you get the point. Slicing forward always. I've seen some people in classes where they slice backwards. So always think of the chopping as a forward motion. And then this is what's really key, so the knife, it's really nice and long and has all this, intimidation here, but the part of the knife you want to focus your attention on is right here. This bottom part of the knife is what does all of the work. That's where you should be slicing every time. So when you go in to cut something, you really need to focus your knife on the back side. You don't want to be cutting with this front tip. I see people, kind of go in and they're, cutting with the front end of that knife. If you're using that transfer of weight, and I'll just start here with a piece of celery so you can see, if you're, oh, there went my orange. If you're seeing, and I'm going to turn and try to make sure that you guys can see different angles here, but the back part of the knife is what's cutting. And the way the knife is designed to have that curve towards the back end makes it a lot easier. If you try to cut with that front end, you have to apply a lot more pressure. But if you're cutting with that forward motion and the back end of that knife, as you can see where that's slicing in the back, it really just does the work itself. It makes it a lot easier. And a sharp knife is your best tool. A dull knife, again, is your most dangerous tool, because when you have a dull knife, you have to apply a lot more force and a lot more pressure. So if I have a dull knife and I'm just trying to just force it, most oftentimes it doesn't go where you want it to, and it typically goes the wrong way. And that's where we end up with those nicks and those cuts. So definitely take Kenna up and take Pendleton County if you're there. Go and get your knife sharpened and, practice. It does take practice, and I don't expect you to have this mastered by the end of our time. I spent, I think, 2 to 3 months in the first part of culinary school just on knife cuts. And if you've seen the movie Julie and Julia, it's so true. We get bags of potatoes, we get bags of onions, and we just go to town on them, because the more you do, the better you get and the more comfortable you are with it. And that's with anything. So, just take your time, and hopefully this will give you some great tips, along the way. All right, so just a little bit more on safety, and we're going to talk about what I consider the guide hand that's kind of feeding it through. But you should never, no matter what we're working on, even when it's with the chicken, you should never be cutting towards yourself. Always think about cutting away. You should be able to turn the product some way or shape or fashion to where you're always cutting down and away. This is our guide hand. So one thing that you want to do, and I've got a very, very thick cutting board here. You want to prep your space. Maybe grab a bowl or two to be like a trash bowl for you, like as we're working through some of this. Some of this will be trash, some of this we're going to keep. So if you have some bowls that you can grab, or you've got, you know, some places that you can sit things, we want to keep our board clear. You don't want to have your board ever crowded to where you're over here in a corner trying to work. You always want to have yourself centered with your cutting board. And the reason for that is as we get to where we start cutting, you can actually see, I can see right over top of my blade when I'm centered with the board, and I can see every time that I cut if I'm cutting, you know, the same thickness or not. That's something that you can do by looking over your knife. Secondly, when your knife is gripped, and I have it here, I don't have my knife just straight on my board. The natural angle that my knife comes from my elbow is at an angle. So if you're just standing at your board, just hold your knife in front of you. It's not going to be straight. It's going to be at this angle. So always think of almost like you're meeting, like X marks the spot. So I have this angled this way coming off of my arm, and I have my knife angled the other way coming off of my arm at that natural angle where they just kind of meet. And so that will give you a straight cut, and you're not sitting here curving your wrist and putting this pressure on your wrist. That's really going to warp your wrist over time. It needs to just be at that natural extension. So always think about meeting in the middle and at two different angles coming together. Now, if we wanted to do a bias cut, then I might straighten this out, and then this one would be angled. So that would give us an angled cut. But what we're pretty much going to be working with today is a straight cut. All right. So what do we do with this guide hand? Always think of it, we're Kentucky fans, I hope. Always think of it as that wildcat claw, okay? So you want to curve your fingers out. Your fingertips are under, your knuckles are out. So if my knuckles are out and I'm not raising my knife up off the board, I can feel the blade next to my knuckles, and I know, if you can see, I know that my fingertips are protected, okay? I always kind of twist my wrist a little bit and try to keep that thumb back behind, like back behind my fingertips. And if any of you play piano, or if you've seen that, you're almost gripping the food, you know, with those little tips of your fingertips, but the knuckles are in front of them. So as we get closer, I can just sit and chop with that knife up next to the knuckles. So what I'd like for you to do is maybe just try to see what that feels like, slowly getting that motion of slicing forward, pulling back, slicing forward, pulling back, not raising your knife up, but just feeling how the knuckles can almost can guide you, where the blade is just rubbing next to those knuckles. I know that's a little scary, but it's a natural feeling that you should feel over time. But always remember to keep those fingertips tucked under, those knuckles out, and that knuckle becomes that guide where you know if you're getting too close or not. I'm just going to see who I can see here. I'm watching. Very good. All right. So some of you I see also something I mentioned. Remember, it is a forward motion, because I see some people kind of doing the opposite where it's coming back. So always think of it as a pushing forward versus pulling the knife back. You push it forward, but then you just bring it up to reset. And then you push it forward and bring it up to reset. Yeah, very good. Okay, so we're going to start with our cucumber. And I think what we'll do is kind of just do the components. I'm going to do it a little differently, Kenna, than what I've done in the past, just do the components of the salad first so we can get that together. And then we'll go into the vegetables and kind of get those on our sheet tray. And then we'll go to the chicken. So what you'll need first is you're going to need your cucumbers. You're going to need your orange, and you're going to need your basil. And then if you've got, salt and pepper, or I may, see if you've got like a spice or two in the pantry, maybe you've got some chili powder or some paprika, that would be really great, or a little cayenne if you like a little heat. But we're going to get the components of the salad together. We'll get that in a bowl, because the longer that juice kind of works with the cucumber and mango, I think that'll be really nice. Okay, so I'm going to turn down and see, do most of them have the hothouse cucumbers? Is that right? You've got garden cucumbers, it looks like, yes?
They kind of got a longer cucumber.
Yeah, but not like an English cucumber, right?
Correct.
Okay. So you should be fine. I've got an English cucumber here. It's just seedless, so sometimes it's a little easier to work with. Does everybody have a peeler?
We have a question in the chat.
Uh-huh.
They were asking that you repeat what you were saying earlier, cucumber, orange, and then they didn't catch the last half.
Okay, cucumber, orange, mango, and basil. That's what you're going to get first.
And she also asked you to look for a peeler. If you did not hear that instruction as well.
Say that again.
She asked for you asked for them to look for a peeler.
Yes, if they have a peeler, yes. It's not a big deal, but I know some of those cucumbers can have a thicker skin. So I don't want to peel. Well, if you've already peeled it, go ahead. I wouldn't peel the whole thing. I would just kind of score it. Just kind of score it, just maybe, peeling a few bits off. So where you've got some of your peel off and some of it not. Gives you a little bit more color. And I like just the variation. Whew. Excuse me, the rain. Ooh, the rain. All right. So this is going to be a way that we cut a lot of our vegetables, and you want all of your round objects to have kind of what we considered a flat side. So I'm going to score this other one a little bit, and giving it a flat side is going to protect you so that it's not rolling around on you. So if you just take your cucumber, all you're going to do is just cut just a tiny little sliver off of one side and then roll it over. So that way it sits flat, on your board. So I just cut just a tiny piece off of the side, almost like if you were cutting a bit of the peel off, and that just gives your cucumber a flat side so that it is steady. Okay, now here's another rule of thumb, always to kind of keep in mind with all the vegetables and things that you're working with. Whatever you're cutting, you don't want it to be longer than your actual blade. So if your cucumber is longer than your blade, go ahead and cut that in half so that it's more manageable to work with, okay? All right, once you've cut that flat side, then you're going to cut another flat side. So you almost have squared off your cucumber. Okay, so you kind of basically have two flat sides. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to cut some wide planks. Okay, so if I cut a wide plank, again, remember we've got our guide hand here, our knuckles forward, and then you just slice forward. Always remember being centered in front of your board, and you should be able to see where you're cutting on the back end to the front end so that you get the same thickness. So if I cut again, I'm going to just look and I can see all the way down if I'm cutting that same thickness. So these are probably, I would say, maybe an inch thick. We're just doing some wide planks here because we're going to do a large dice of our cucumber. So just cutting planks. My cucumber, I got about 3 planks out of it. It's going to be a little, it's going to be a little soft there in the center because you do have those garden cucumbers and those seeds are fine. If you want to cut those seeds out and just use the outer parts, you can do that too. I'm totally fine with all of it. So that's just kind of a personal preference.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me? What do you do when you get to the end? Like I was watching you and your fingers went out, but
That's a great
you don't
question. So once you get to the end, what you can do is you can bridge. So if you take your hand over, you bridge, and then you can cut another, straight cut straight down.
Oh, that's smart. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Anytime you start to feel like you are getting too close to your hands, or you want to, bridge over top, and then you can slice down, that allows you to hold the vegetable at the same time. All right, so once you have these planks, and I'm going to back up here so you can see. Once you have the planks, you can stack a couple of them if you want, and basically what we're going to do is we're just going to cut a couple strips. Okay, so you take your planks and you start cutting a couple of uniform strips, right? So you can see what I've got here, almost like cucumber sticks. Okay, once you have your sticks and once you have your cucumber cut into those strips, then we're just going to take those strips and we're going to go back across, and this is where you're going to really practice that motion of slicing forward, keeping the knife on the board, and just using that rocking motion to get those nice diced cucumber. All right, I'm going to get a plate, a white plate, so you can see. Okay, is that helpful? Kind of see the size we're talking about. It's kind of just like what I would consider a medium dice. The reason we don't cut the cucumber straight down the middle in this case and dice it, you could, but it doesn't give you that uniformity. And so as chefs, that's what we want to try to teach, is that, how do you break it down so that you get that more uniform cut? And it's always cutting into those planks, cutting into strips, and then cutting into dice. And we're going to do the same thing later, with our celery and with our potatoes. All right, so just take the rest of that cucumber, and I'm going to kind of scroll and watch and just see, how you're doing. But I want you to just practice working that motion of slicing forward and not raising your knife up off the board, and just kind of pushing forward and just breaking that cucumber into those strips. Turning, again, remember coming at that angle where your knife is angled from your arm, and then your food is being pushed through. And almost as I get to the end, I kind of use the thumb to kind of almost push that last little piece through. And if you get to where you don't feel comfortable, take your hand over your knife. That way you can hold it at the same time. All right, one thing we haven't talked about, when you're picking up food and when you're discarding, always brush away, down and away from the blade, the food. But when you scrape your knife on the board, you never want to scrape just straight across. You almost want to go at that same angle as you were when I was showing you how to sharpen. Always scrape at that angle. That will not dull your blade as much. You can also flip your knife over, the back side of your spine of the knife. You could use that to pick the food up and then brush away, down and away from the blade. So always brush down and away off of the blade and then scrape at that angle versus straight across. That's just going to dull your knife if you keep just scraping it on that board. Now, I see some of you have like a small, like Sandy and Ken, I think you've got a smooth, like a silicone mat or a small board. One thing when you have, and I didn't mention this earlier, but when you have a smaller cutting board on a smooth surface, a great tip to keep your board from sliding around on you is if you get a damp paper towel or a damp rag or a damp cloth and put it underneath your cutting board, that will keep your cutting board secure and it will keep it from moving around on your countertop. So if you notice while you're starting to cut and work, if your cutting board is moving or sliding on you, just get a damp little cloth, lay it down underneath, and that should help secure your board on your countertop.
Allison, they all got those cutting boards in their bag that they picked up at our offices too. So
Okay, great.
they all have those silicone type cutting boards because in their bag they got one of each, a red and a green.
So is that helpful, Sandy? I saw a thumbs up. Great. All right. So definitely if you have those and want to, you know, put that paper towel underneath there. Oh, the wind is picking up. Then that will help keep your board a little more secure.
I just used my cutting board.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Nothing.
All right. Are we ready to move on? Do we have our cucumbers cut?
How did you break the habit of using your pointer finger on your knife? Because I keep doing it.
That's a great question. And my chef, every time I would do that, he would just come around and just smack my finger. And I just, you know, eventually broke it. But, you know, I did realize that it does give you a little bit better grip doing that versus it just, you break the habit. You just have to kind of mentally, you know, think about it as you do it. But he would just come around, and if he saw my finger out, he'd just smack my finger, and I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, it just became, you just had to reteach yourself in that case. All right, we're going to go to the mango, and I hope that you have a ripe mango. If not, it's going to be a little harder for you. So when you are purchasing a mango and what you look for, you want to have almost where it has a little bit of a give to it. Like if you were picking a good pear, it's juicy, but it's not super soft, right? If it's really soft, then it might be too far gone, but it should have a little bit of a give where you can kind of press in with your thumb. Now, a mango has a huge pit in the center, so you can't cut directly through it. You have to cut around it. So the first thing, like I said, when you've got a round object, we want to try to give it a flat side. So we're always going to cut lengthwise. It looks taller, right? You want to stand it up where it's taller. Does that make sense? You don't want to lay it on its side. You want to stand it up where it's tall. Okay, that's how we're going to cut it. But what I want to do is just cut a little bit off the bottom there so that we can stand it up and it has got a flat side. Okay, so just a little bit off the top or off the bottom. All right, now as we get into cutting the mango, we're not going to peel it. We're just going to take our knife. The bottom is the stem end. Yes, thank you. All right, so we're going to take it and we're going to cut around that pit. So you almost just have to feel. Now remember, my guide hand's behind the knife, and I'm just taking my knife down, and I can feel that pit. So you just take your knife out, curve it with that pit, and then curve it back. Okay, so you just take it down and around. And you just feel your way around that pit. Because just like this, you cannot cut through the pit. So you're going to have to cut around it. Anybody else love mango? All right, we kept the skin on, and I like to keep the skin on because when you take the skin off and you try to cut it, it's a lot more, it's more slippery, right? It's wet. So keep the skin on, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna score it in the skin. Okay, scoring it means what I'm gonna do right here is like if I were cutting an avocado in the skin. So take this, and I'm just gonna take my knife, and you can bridge if you like, but you're just gonna cut some strips in the skin. You should be able to almost just feel it with the tip of your knife, meaning that nose. So this time you just can use that nose. Then I'm gonna go back across and give it that cross cut to where you almost have it diced in the skin. You guys see how I just kind of flip that out?
Can you move your camera down just a little bit so we can see your cutting board? And do that again.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, so I just take the nose of my knife and I'm just basically just tracing a line, and I'm just cutting the mango in the skin, and then I go back across to dice it in the skin. I'm not cutting through the skin, I'm just almost cutting to the skin. So you can just pop it out like that. Now, once you have it scored like this, all you're gonna do, and again, you're never cutting towards yourself, but if your hand's on top and my knife is pressing against the board, I can run my knife like I'm almost filleting a fish. Run my knife right across my hand. And that helps to just remove that mango right off the skin, and you have it all diced. So with your hand on top, flat, fingers flat, the knife is not gonna curl up and cut you, right? So it's just gonna go right, if you lose control of that knife, it's just gonna go whoop, right underneath. So you don't wanna have your fingers here because you could lose control. So you put your hand flat on top and you just run that knife against the board right across that skin. And that allows you to dice that mango and remove it right off of the skin like so. So we're gonna mix our mango with our cucumber. And I'll give you some time to prep that however much you wanna do on that. But just like that, I'm just pulling my knife back, scoring it in the skin. Then you can just kind of press your hand forward, push your knife against the board so that you're, creating that force, and then just run it across the skin. For me, I found that to be the best way to dice a mango and to handle it. And now we've got our mango and our cucumber together. And I'm gonna grab a bowl because I need a trash bowl. Any questions on that? We're doing okay? All right, we're gonna do something fun with the orange. This is called orange supremes, orange segments. And it is a technique that you see a lot of times in restaurants on salads.
Allison, I think we have several still cutting on their mango.
Okay, perfect, no
Let's
problem
give them just
whatsoever.
a few seconds.
Yep, and I think
I see a lot of knives working and a lot of cutting still going.
And I didn't say, but I think the red onion would be good in this as well, because we have the white onion and the red onion, I think, on your list. So it's optional, but the red onion, all we're gonna do with the red onion is some slices. So we can go to that next when you're ready, but I'll give you a chance to catch up. And any feedback, anything that I can help with or answer, you just let me know.
I see people eating their mango.
Good. That's supposed to be the fun part of cooking, right? You got to eat as you go. Some of you I can see really well, so that's great to kind of see how you're doing. All right, do we think we're there? All right, all we're gonna do with the red onion, again, same thing as if we're working with any round object, we wanna give it a flat side. We're not gonna do the onion cutting technique on this one. We're gonna do that with the white onion. So this is just gonna be some slices of onion. So the first thing I'm gonna do is we're gonna cut it root to tip. So notice I'm bridging my hand over top so that way I can grip, but my guide hand is away from the knife, and so you cut down and away, right? Now for slicing and just some little rings, we're gonna cut both the tip and the root off of the onion, and we'll discard those. Once you cut the root and the tip off, you can easily take the skin of that onion right off. Now, if you don't like onion, don't put it in, okay? This is your salad, so make it your own. So you should just have half of an onion with both ends removed. All we're gonna do is just take that knife, using that same motion of sliding forward. You can see my knife. You're just slicing forward, and I just want some really thin strips, however much you want, and then just hold on to the rest of that for later so that you have it. Don't waste it, okay? And then just add that red onion into your salad, however much you feel like you like. The red onion's just gonna give it a nice little pop, and then also give it a little bit of heat there. And then we're just gonna move that red onion out of the way. We could keep that other half if you wanna practice the onion cutting later. But yes, just add what you like into there. And then we're gonna go to the orange. This is so fun. Watching all you cook at home. This is so cool.
Sherry and I just made a comment that we're glad it's at everybody else's house and we don't have to clean up at the office afterwards.
I bet. All right. So this is a little technical. If you have a paring knife, you may want to have that ready. I'm probably going to use my chef's knife, and we're going to first off just cut the ends of both sides of the orange, just like we did with the onion. Sorry about that. I'm at the shop. I don't know what. All right, so you've got you've got your orange cut. Both tops and bottoms have been cut off so that you have a flat side again, right? So we now are not going to roll around anywhere. Our onion or our orange is going to stay put. Now we're going to cut supremes. We're going to cut those little pretty orange segments that you see on salads. So what do you think the first thing we need to do is? We're going to have to remove that rind. So you're just going to take your knife, and you can see right into where you want to first start cutting, but you're going to be curving your knife, right? So we're going to take our knife and just curve it around and with that curve of the orange. Once you get in that first cut, you should be able to easily see exactly where that orange rind is, and just keep working your knife right around. Any of the little white parts that you see, just try to have those removed. And then we're going to, you want to have it looking pretty much like that.
Do you hold the paring knife the same way? I mean,
The
that would
paring
make
knife?
sense.
I
Yeah.
do hold the paring knife the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is anybody else still crying from the onion?
That's why we got it out of the way. Got it out of the way quickly. Any good old wives' tales, go right ahead. But I've heard the match in the mouth. I've heard soaking it in water. The biggest thing all those are trying to do is like suppress the gas, because when you cut into the onion, it releases that gas, and it's that iris or the pupils of your eye that react with that gas in the air that causes you to cry. So if anybody that's working tonight has contacts on, you are likely not crying. And if there's anybody in your house that wears contacts, make them the official onion chopper, because they likely will not cry when they cut onions. I've tried the onion goggles. It still doesn't work because it just gets trapped in there and sometimes even makes it worse. So I don't know. I hope that when we get to the onion cutting part that you will just learn how to do it quickly, and that way you can get it done and get it out of the way. All right, looks like we've got our oranges ready. All right, so if you want to watch, I'm going to try to do this up close so that you can see. What you're going to do to cut those supremes is you're going to go in between those veins, okay? So you take your knife in to the middle of the orange, and then you go to the other vein and you take it to the center of the orange, and you should be able to just pop that segment right out. So the veins, those veins in the orange is what's holding those segments together. So you cut inside those to the center of your orange. And then you should be able to just pop those segments right out. And those are going to go into our salad. So just cutting between the veins to the center and then popping it out. Is that helpful that you can see? Oh, look at me, I'm pointing. You see me doing my pointer finger? Somebody should be already on me. Is that why you were asking me if I hold it the same way with the paring knife? I probably do have a habit of pointing with my paring knife. If you don't have a paring knife, you can do this with your chef's knife. And if you don't feel comfortable cutting towards yourself, you can cut on the board to that vein once you cut that orange in half. So I'm going in between each vein to the center, and then I just have those little orange segments to remove. Keep your center, keep your guts, so to speak. Once you get those segments out, keep those guts, because there's still a lot of juice there. And so what I do is once I get my pretty segments, in my bowl, we're just gonna take the guts and just juice all that in there. Get all that juice on your cucumber and on your mango. So I think did you have 2 oranges, Kenna?
No, I think we only had 1 orange.
1. Okay, so make sure you try to juice as much of that as you can. And then we're going to go to our basil. It's looking pretty, isn't it? It's like our last summer salad.
Allison, in Gallatin County, when I picked up our order, I didn't get a lot of basil and thyme, so they just got a small portion of basil and thyme.
Okay. As long as you have a couple leaves, I'd say you're fine.
Okay.
My basil's seen better days.
And it was packaged and some of it was bruised. So
Yeah.
can you explain what it's supposed to look like? Because there's some of them doesn't
Yeah,
look.
it should be nice and bright and green. What's probably happened, basil actually should not be refrigerated. So if basil gets super cold, that's when it gets black and bruised. So my guess is some of that basil is probably still fresh and fine, but it might have been refrigerated or gotten cold, like in the coolers or in the transport, to where then it might have gotten a little, black from that.
Yeah, it was definitely cold and refrigerated when I picked it up, and so I put it in the refrigerator here too. So sorry.
Yeah. No, so just a rule of thumb, your basil actually does better. You could put it in some water, keep it out at room temperature. In our Kroger, I always find it with the tomatoes. It's always out in room temperature. So the cold does definitely bruise and kind of hurts. And same thing, when it gets cold weather, you see your basil plant doing great. And once it gets too cold, what happens to it outside? It just, starts to turn black and bruise. So, definitely leave it at room temperature.
Yeah.
All right, what we're going to do.
I would say all the basil we're working with is going to be the same way, because ours came refrigerated and I refrigerated it too. So hopefully we got some good leaves.
Oh, the flavor is going to be there. The flavor is going to be there, so don't worry about that. All right, so what we're going to do is you're going to just take your basil leaves off of your stems, and we're going to do what's called chiffonade.
We do have a quick question. Does the basil need to be washed or anything?
No. No, I'm sure it's been pre-rinsed, pre-washed. I mean, if you've got dirt on it, then maybe go ahead, but otherwise it's good to go. So you're just going to take your leaves off of the stems, and we're just going to stack the leaves together. Notice how I've just kind of stacked these all up together on top of each other, one after the other. Herbs like your basil, like your sage, like your dill, they will get black and bruised the more you chop them. If you've ever tried mincing basil, it just keeps turning black the more you chop it. Same with dill, it just starts to get black and it loses that bright green vibrant color. So these type of herbs you really don't want to mince, you want to chiffonade, because they're a more delicate leafy herb. So by stacking them together and then you roll them, like a little cigar, you just roll them up. You're going to then slice really thin strips. And what that's going to do is that's going to give you what's called a chiffonade cut. And so it's just a ribbon-like cut that you can sprinkle in to your dish. And so basically that's the easiest way to go about cutting your herbs that are leafy like that without damaging them too much, and then getting them nice and fine so that they'll mix into your dishes. So that's just the simple. Sorry?
Do we cut the stems off first?
You take the leaves off of the stems.
Off the stems. I mean, like
Yeah.
stem on the leaf, like this. I don't know if you can see my.
Oh, that little bit of stem on the leaf is fine.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I just meant like the big stem, like the stalk.
And then Allison, move your camera down a little bit more, get into the cutting board to where I couldn't see it there.
Okay,
Good.
I'll do it one more time for you. So you just take your leaves here. Can you see me now? Just kind of rolling those up, and I'm going to turn, and then you just take your knife and just slice very thin. Let's see. I'm going to put it up on another book and get a little closer and see if that helps. Kenna, I know you know that book. I don't know if that made it better or worse. All right, are we still chopping on the basil or are we past that? We're good? All right, so this is kind of the base of our salad. What I would do is maybe season this up with a little salt and pepper. If you have salt and pepper in your kitchen, I hope so. And I would give it a little olive oil. If you didn't have enough juice from your orange, maybe we can take half of that lemon that we have. But I think you should be good. But I would just do a little salt and pepper, a little bit of olive oil in with that orange. As I was saying, if you have a little chili powder, or if you like a little spice, chili powder and mango are one of my two favorite combos. So I would add a little chili powder to this and I would be done. So I would encourage you to try it, get that fresh flavor, and then just let this sit and enjoy this a little bit later. And Kenna, I just got a low battery alert on my phone. So I'm gonna grab my charger real quick and plug my phone into that.
Okay. Hopefully everybody's caught up or keeping up. Just remember to chat or unmute if you need to ask any questions as we're going. And I'm really glad she gave you the tip about the cutting boards. I was going to do that when we first started out, and she gave that tip when the agents did it. And I've been putting a wet paper towel under mine ever since because they do slide.
I'm trying to figure out how the best way this thing's gonna work. Sorry.
That's fine. It's giving people time to catch up if they were a little bit behind too. And
No
clean
worries.
up. And
Yeah, I don't want to leave you with a mess when we're done. Sorry. See how I'm propping this thing up. Sorry, Kenna. Have a help.
I think Sherry and I, are, as a thank you gift, might send you a holder you don't want to stand. It's the best purchase we've made since we started all this videoing things.
Yeah.
Because we truly appreciate you doing it. The class.
Now, I have a question, like with the onion. So I've heard you don't, if we cut the onion, can we keep it in a plastic bag like this if we don't use it all? And then
Yeah.
put it in the fridge?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, okay. Because I've heard something like, I don't know what I've heard. Okay.
No, if it's secure, if it's airtight, then it's not gonna, absorb anything else from your fridge.
Okay, just like a Ziploc bag would be.
Yeah, make sure it's just covered tightly. Yeah. Otherwise, an onion definitely absorbs everything around it. So, did we try the salad? I'm just sitting here and eat and watch y'all cook. Okay, how are we doing? Are we ready to move on?
I think so. I think everybody's caught up.
Okay, like I said, a little chili powder, a little cayenne, and then if you want a little bit more citrus, any vinegar will work. If you have white vinegar, or if you have apple cider vinegar, or lime juice or lemon juice, if it's not enough citrus that you didn't get from that orange, just add a little bit of extra vinegar in there and you should be good to go. But that's a colorful, beautiful salad to finish off our summer. All right, so we're going to go on to the rest of our ingredients. And what you'll want to do is probably just get a sheet tray, like a cookie sheet, or a casserole dish, like a 9 by 13, either one, a cookie sheet or like a glass casserole dish that you can lay everything in and the chicken in, and then we can, cover that and you can roast that and bake that. So I'll give you a chance to get that, and I'm going to grab a sheet tray as well with a little bit of parchment.
Should we go ahead and turn on the oven?
Yes, if you're cooking it tonight, yes.
What temperature?
I would go 375. 375 to 400 is kind of my ideal temperature for roasting and working with vegetables and chicken. If you go over 400, you're going to probably get more of a darker skin. And for me, a lot of ovens at 350 almost steam. They don't get hot enough to where it's sweating and you don't get any browning or caramelization. So I would definitely go 375 to 400, and you know how your oven works. I'm going to cheat over here and eat the salad while we're working. Any comments? Anybody try it?
I see people eating it and some thumbs up, so that's a good.
Okay, good.
It's really good.
I'm adding more and more cayenne pepper to mine. I hope I don't regret it later.
No, that's the beauty of it. The cucumber will cool it all down. All right. So
It's very good.
we're ready to move on. Thank you all. I'm glad you like that. You know, when you're working with simple ingredients, sometimes it doesn't have to be super, complicated. So we wanted to give you something that we typically work with our knife skills class, and then turn it into a dish. So, we could take that salad a lot of different directions. I honestly think if you had roast chicken, you could toss in roast chicken with that and make that kind of like almost like a tropical kind of roast chicken salad that you could pack up and take for lunch. That would be really good with that. All right, so we're going to go to the celery first. And again, this is just going to be us trying to work on that knife skill a little bit longer. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your celery, and again, we just want to try to work on getting those nice dice and getting your vegetables, just getting you more comfortable with working with the knife itself. So celery is one of those weird things. It's the only one that's really shaped like this U. So what I typically do is I'm going to use the nose, the tip of my knife, and just run my knife straight down the celery stalk to divide that into even strips. Almost like you're just tracing a line using the nose of that knife and just running it straight down. So that just allows you to get some nice straight, stalks. And then we can go right back like we did before, and you're just going to practice that slicing motion forward. Notice, remember, always using the back end of your knife, the back end of your blade for the cutting. And you're just slicing forward, and try to just find that rhythm or feel that rhythm where, you're just making contact with the board, you're slicing those small pieces, and we're just dicing that celery up, and that's just going to go on our board. That's going to be kind of an aromatic. It's just going to add some flavor, to our chicken. It's also, as we keep dicing this, the celery at the bottom is also going to become like a bed, because the chicken's going to sit on top of this. So, don't be afraid to add more, because if you don't like celery, don't add too much. But the celery on the bottom of the pan and on the bottom of the tray is going to actually be like a level. So this chicken will sit on top of that. And Kenna, I don't have that worksheet in front of me. If there is something that you want me to cover that maybe I haven't mentioned yet.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So,
Cutting-
you know,
while you
not
guys
to,
are-
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Allison, while you guys are, they are cutting the celery and keeping up, I'm gonna ask real quick, and so you have plenty of time when you have a break or caught up between now and the end. So we have a good attendance. At some point in time during the session, if anybody is watching this with you, write their names in the chat. And also, if your name doesn't appear with your full name underneath you, write your name as well. So Sherry and I have good record of who attended the session. Please and thank you.
Yeah, this has been awesome. I'm so glad that there was such a great response.
Did you tell us how many celery stalks to cut?
It's really up to you. What I did was I cut, you know, maybe 2 or 3, and I've just got it kind of laid across my board or across my sheet tray. Like I said, that just is going to become like almost like a bed to sit the chicken on. It'll add some flavor, but if you don't like the celery, it's not really the main component of the dish. And did you all have carrots as well?
Yes. In the beginning, when you were showing us knife stuff, I played around with a couple of celery sticks and I cut them, you know, like the little U's. Can I use those too since it's just the bed? Okay.
I did as well, yes. Waste not, want not, right?
Allison, everybody at least has 2 carrots, and some people have 2 pounds of carrots because I couldn't divide the bags because UK said we could not.
All right. So after you've got a good bit of celery there on your board, yes, if you cut the U's, if you cut, you know, just small dice, you know, this just gives you a chance to kind of work with that knife and feel that rhythm of just slicing, using that forward motion, and just working with your knife. So that's going to go on the bottom of the board, of the tray. We're going to get the carrots next, and we're going to do a bias cut on the carrots. So I don't peel my carrots. You all are welcome to peel your carrots, but I don't. If they, you know, if they've got certain spots, I typically don't, because there's a lot of nutrients just in the skin of the carrots as well. You know, you definitely can rinse them off if you feel, you know, like you want to rinse them off ahead of time. If you want to peel them, go ahead and peel them, but I typically don't, just because, again, there's several nutrients just in the peel itself. And when we roast these vegetables, we are, you know, everything's going to take on that same texture. It's going to be cooked, and it's going to be good to go. So just personal preference. So as I was saying before, when we are cutting our vegetables, we're kind of coming together at that X marks the spot, right, where everything's coming at that angle. If we're doing a bias cut, I'm going to have my carrot straight across the board, and then my knife just at that natural angle. So the more you angle your knife, the longer your bias cut. Okay? If I'm just going straight across, then I'm cutting coins. So you want to elongate that cut. That's what a bias cut is. So you just angle your knife a little longer, and that gives you more of a surface area on your cut. So that's like a true, you know, bias cut. It's an elongated cut. So in order to do that, we keep our carrot straight and then our knife just at that angle. And then if you want a longer cut, then you just angle your knife a little bit more. And that gives you that nice long elongated cut. So what we're going to do is just lay all that bias cut carrots all on our cooktop, on our cookie sheet. If you don't have parchment, it's totally fine. I just like using parchment because it makes for a little easier cleanup, but you don't have to use that. If you aren't using parchment, maybe go ahead and just drizzle some olive oil on that celery and on the board, and that'll help, you know, kind of just grease your pan a little bit. You're going to get plenty from the chicken when the chicken cooks because it just naturally has enough fat in the skin, so you'll get that from there as well. So any questions on that bias cut? I'm still gripping. Keep in mind, I'm still using that same forward motion. I'm not raising my knife up off the board every time. I still have the nose of the knife on the board and then slicing forward. It's just the angle of my knife is different, and that's all. So how many did we end up with today? How many people are we cooking with tonight?
I'm seeing 78 participants.
Is that all Pendleton County?
No, it's a combination of Pendleton, Gallatin, a few Boone County, I believe as well. And some of them have multiple people at their house. So once everybody puts in the chat who's here, we'll end up with more than 78, I think.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Allison, I want to, because Tony has ratted me out, but I'm so glad, even when you did our FCS, that you say you don't peel your things. I always tell everybody I'm a lazy cook. I don't peel potatoes. I don't peel carrots. So I'll peel potatoes
for certain things, right? Like mashed potatoes and things like that. But when I'm working with root vegetables, a lot of times I will not peel them because, again, I've learned from nutritionists and other, dietitians, there's a lot of nutrients just in that outer peel as well. And the more you peel, the more you're just taking off from that vegetable. So call it lazy if you want, but that's my excuse. Oh, thank you. That was a great feedback. Somebody said it's great technique. All right, so as much carrots as you want. So right now you've just got some celery and you've got some carrots across your board or on your cookie sheet, just kind of flat and rolling. The next thing we're going to do, what I would like everyone to grab, because it's going to be a little bit before we get it in the oven, is maybe just get a bowl of water, because we're going to cut the potatoes, but the potatoes oxidize very quickly. So we want to try to put those in water until we're ready to get those onto the sheet tray so that they don't turn purple or black on us.
Okay, so I have a question, because I'm not gonna put it in the oven tonight.
Okay.
Because it's a little late. But should I keep these soaking in water then?
The vegetables are fine except for the potatoes, but I leave the potatoes in water overnight many times. Like if we're doing a big thing of mashed potatoes or something the next day, you can go ahead and cut and dice your potatoes up and leave them in water. You can even leave them in water. You can leave them in water several days, but you need to change that water. Okay. So you change your water, you'll notice it'll kind of bubble at the top. If you just change your water regularly, you can keep the potatoes for a couple days in the water.
Okay.
All right, so if you've got your water handy, you've got your potatoes handy, we're going to go right on to that. And what we're going to do with our potatoes is we're going to do what's called a matchstick cut. It's like a French fry cut, so to speak. Same thing as what we pretty much did with the cucumbers. We're going to do that with the potatoes. So just like we were working with anything, you want to give it a flat side. So you're just going to cut a little bit off of the bottom and turn that potato over and then give it another flat side. Okay, so I've just basically just kind of squared my potato off, basically just cutting off the peel. I really haven't wasted much of the potato at all. It's just a tiny little cut just to give you a flat side so that it's not rolling around on you anymore. All right, once you've gotten to that point, then we're going to do the same thing like we did. Remember, you're centered with your board. You're just going to cut those planks, maybe about a ½ inch thick. And just cut those plates, maybe a ¼ inch thick. Sorry, I'm not good on my thickness. I'd say that's about a ¼ inch. All right, once you have your planks in place, we're just going to take that and just, again, using that same slicing motion forward, watching your guide hand, we're just cutting some nice strips, and then you can just keep those in water, okay? And those will be ready to go with our other vegetables. Again, we're going into a little detail with this. Normally a sheet pan supper would not take you this long, but we're trying to cover, you know, knife skills at the same time. So bear with me on that.
So with the potatoes, you don't stack them like you did the.
You could do 2 stacks if you want. I just wouldn't go very high with them.
They're slippery. So
yeah. So 2 is about all I would do, because
right.
again, you don't want it to be so high where you're having to do this. You just want to still be able to take your knife and use that forward motion, right? So if you stack it too high, then you're, you know, going to be higher than your knuckles, and you have risk of cutting your knuckles when you come down. Mm-hmm. Now, this is, you know, again, this is kind of French technique. You know, for me, I don't like to waste much. So even those little bits that you cut off at the beginning, if you want to just cut some strips and add those in, right? So use as much of the product as you can. That's what I try to do anyways. I try not to waste too much.
This is the easiest way to make French fries. I am so excited about this. This is awesome.
All right. Well, when you you can make them in the air fryer. I know everybody's like got an air fryer now, but if you do fry them from scratch, just a rule of thumb, fry them twice. You fry them first to cook the potato. You fry them second to get them crispy. So just cutting those planks.
I appreciate 2 things you've taught in the last couple minutes. I thought I had plenty before we ever cut the first thing. I felt like I'd already learned a lot. But then being able to do the potatoes and just keep them in the water the day or 2 before a big event, huge lifesaver. Why did I never know that? And then this last deal with frying the French fries twice, that we'll be trying that tomorrow.
There you go.
So
So
thank
if you don't fry them up tomorrow, go for it. You don't have to add them to your chicken dinner.
Yeah, we do fries all the time, and golly, I didn't even think of doing them twice. That's nice. I'll be doing that tomorrow. So thank you.
So yeah, so the first time you fry them just to kind of soften them up and cook the inners. You don't want to like brown them. You just almost like blanch them or par cook them, right, in the oil.
Right.
You take them out and then you let your oil heat back up again, and then you drop them in again, and then that's when they start to crisp up, and that's when you let them get really nice and brown and crispy. And then when they come out of the fryer the second time, that's when you want to salt the crap out of them.
Yeah, I've tried soaking them in ice water and ice cube, everything, but I can't wait to try something new. So thank you.
Yeah. So I've just got my, potatoes here in water. And again, once we're ready to add them in, you want to drain those and then just sprinkle those on. But yeah, all of these could go in a crock pot. Absolutely. Yeah, we've cut the vegetables down a little small. So I would say if they're going in a crock pot overnight or for 8 hours, like most of the vegetables are going to break down. The chicken's going to get the flavor, but because we've cut the vegetables down, they're probably going to break down quite a bit in the crock pot, just so you know. Usually if I'm crock pot cooking, you want to have like a big chunk of potato, a big chunk of carrot. You know, you want larger dice of your vegetables. So that would be my only caution if you were doing this in the crock pot. All right, the next thing you need is that garlic bulb. We need to mince up some garlic. So you have the whole garlic. I tend to just kind of, rub the garlic a little bit and take a little bit of that outer skin off just so we can get to the cloves. This being the bulb, if you're not aware, is the whole bulb. And the cloves are the petals, so to speak, that you pull off of the bulb. You're going to do, I would say, probably 3 or 4 of the cloves at least. If you like garlic, go big, go more. I think garlic makes it all better. Don't you dare try to pick the skins off of those cloves. I'm watching because I'm going to show you how. All right, you've got the skin on the clove still. You can see me. You're going to take that knife right on top of that clove and just lay it flat. Take out some of that frustration from the day. And you should see the skins just pop right off, and then you can pop your garlic clove right out of the skin. So just taking your knife flat, giving it a hit a couple times, and then popping the skin right out.
How did you break apart your bulb?
So I kind of rubbed it a little bit, taking the skin off of the outside, right? The outer, just little bits of skin, and then just pulling the clove off. You just kind of pop it off one at a time.
Okay.
You should be able to just pull it, but it'll still have skin around the clove.
I didn't manhandle it enough.
Okay. So then take your knife right on top, hit it, and then it'll break that skin up, and you should be able to just pull the clove right out. And we're going to just discard all of that skin.
So Allison, back to the potatoes. If they're going to keep them in the water overnight, does that need to go in the refrigerator?
Absolutely, yes. Yes. So as I was saying, like, we will do large batches of mashed potatoes and large batches of diced potatoes, and you can keep them in the fridge in the water for several days, but you want to change that water daily because it will bubble up. That it will react with the water. So you just need to make sure you have clean water that it's in for a couple days if you're not cooking them immediately. And then if you're frying them, make sure you dry them well. Oil and water, don't mix. So make sure that you pat those dry, or you get those dry and all right, this is your easiest technique. This is your easiest mincing. If you have a garlic mincer, that's great. But all we're going to do for mincing is you're going to take your knife onto the board, the nose on the board. Your hand is on top, just up and down. You can go any direction when you're mincing, but just using that back part of the blade, right? Taking that back part of the blade and just rocking it up and down. Just up and down. And I almost pinch when I do this. I notice I do this more and more every time. See how I kind of pinch that blade right above the bolster? I've got all my hands up above my knife, and I'm almost just rocking it just right up and down. Just using that knife. Now this, you've got to kind of clean your blade as you go. Wipe down and away, bring it back to the center, and then just go right back to it. Mincing is your smallest cut. It's your finest cut. And then that's going to go on our board as well, but only about half of it. The other half we're going to sprinkle on our chicken, okay? So just a little bit on the board and save the rest to go on our chicken, okay? A trick, I don't know if any of you have, my father-in-law had it at his house, but one of those little stainless steel soap bars. Stainless steel is actually what helps you to take some of that garlic off of your hands. So anything that you have that's stainless steel that can help to take some of that away. It's still going to be there, but it definitely helps by rubbing stainless steel to remove that garlic and onion kind of off of your fingertips, the smell. All right, are we left with the onion?
And the lemon.
And the lemon, right? All right, so the lemon, we're just going to slice. All right, we're just going to do some slices on the lemon. That's really for flavor for the chicken. So that'll be laid over top of our chicken, and that'll just, the warmer the lemon gets when citrus, this is just a great little tip though. If you have a lemon that is not really juicy or a lime that you can't really get much juice out of, when you heat it up, you get a lot more. So pop it in the microwave. So this is going to lay over our chicken, and as it heats up, that juice is just going to add flavor to the veggies and to the chicken.
Are they round slices, like from the end to end? I got.
Yes, I just did the round slices. Yep.
Okay.
All right, lastly, we're going to tackle that dreaded onion. And I'm just going to go with the red onion, but I think you've got some white onion too, whatever you want to use.
I think most will have to use the white onion because we gave them one red, one white.
Right, right. And it's all the same. It's all the same. Whether you have a Spanish onion, Vidalia, red onion, it's all the same technique. So when you're ready, we'll start with that. Any questions so far? All right, same thing as we did before. We want to give it a flat side. So I just take my knife and I cut straight down, root to tip, okay? Root to tip. All right, we are not going to cut both ends off. So I want to stop you there in case you get ahead of me. You are going to cut off the tip. The root is many. The root is where all the little feet are, where it was pulled out of the ground. The tip is that one little tail. The tip is usually one where it's been pulled from the ground. We are going to remove the tip, but we are going to keep the root, okay, in place. So you can just cut the tip off of both ends. By cutting and removing that tip, same thing as before, we can get underneath that skin. So you don't have to mess and pull fool with that onion too much. So we can remove the skin of the onion very easily. Sometimes you might even have to go in 2 layers. It just depends on the onion. If it's still waxy, you want to get rid of that. All right. All right, so I would ask that maybe you watch me the first time that I cut this, and then I'll do it again so that you can do it with me. But the root, you want to be angled away from you the same angle that your knife is pointing, okay? So the root is away, the same angle that the knife is pointing from your arm. Whether it's a red onion, a white onion, a shallot, you have the same grooves kind of running along the onion. That's what we're going to use as like a slicing guide. So I'm just going to take my knife and basically curve my knife from one end to the other. And I just go in to the root and then I pull back. I go to the root and then I pull back. Notice I'm not cutting through it. I'm just cutting to it and then I pull back. So the nose, I'm almost dragging the nose back so that all of the onion is being cut except for the root. And the root is what's holding it all together, okay? Now, I will turn it where the root is away, but it's straight on the board. And then you're going to make horizontal slices into the onion, depending on the size of the onion. Hand is on top, so it doesn't cut our hand, right? And that goes to the root and back. Now, the final thing that I have here left is I'm just going to go back across and slice down. And then it leaves me with that small dice of onion. And the final thing that you have left, once you get down, you can bridge. But the final thing that I have left to remove is just that root. And then all of the onion has been diced and chopped. And if you need to, just like I did, I just kind of went back over it with a rough chop. But it's all basically uniform and around the same size. And that's the reason we cut it that way, just so that you don't end up with big pieces, small pieces, and then you're having to cut strips at a time. This just allows you to cut the onion kind of together all at once. And then I just put the onion on the board with the carrots and the celery. And this in culinary is known as a mirepoix. This is a base for a lot of soups. A lot of different dishes start with just carrots, celery, and onions. It's kind of the trio that gives a lot of dishes that rounded flavor. And now comes the waterworks. All right, I'm going to go through that one more time as you're cutting, but I have my root away from my knife, the direction my knife is pointing. I just start curving my knife, cutting to the root and then pulling back, to the root and then pulling back. Every time, just kind of pulling that knife back so that all of the onion has been sliced. I turn my knife back over the other direction, the other way. All of the onion has been cut and sliced except for the root. Then hand goes on top. You kind of turn your onion to where it's away from your knife and you slice horizontally into your onion, maybe 1 or 2 times. Then you're ready to go back across and just dice, slicing that onion down where you already made those horizontal slices and those vertical slices. I have a chunk there. If you have a few pieces that aren't quite uniform, then you can just go back across with just a nice little rough chop and you should be good to go. All right, so I'm going to let them finish up that, Kenna. I'm going to give them a chance to kind of just clean up from what we have done. And the final thing we have is just our chicken to prep. So we can get our veggies out of our way. We can kind of get rid of our trash bowl, just to kind of let them clear their workspace. And the trash bowl for me, if you notice, I've been standing here the whole time. I don't have a trash can right underneath me. So for me, having a trash bowl at your workstation just saves you time. So you're not running back and forth to the trash. When you're done, you just have your trash bowl to dispose of. If you have compost, you can take that to the compost. But that's just a kind of a good rule to have while you're working at your counter space to keep your area clean.
And remember, with your cutting boards you received green. And if I do my food safety,
yes,
you got green for the veggies. You also got a red one.
Now in Gallatin County, they only got 1 green one. So sorry, girls and guys.
Sorry, the good thing we're cutting the chicken last.
Yeah.
So, but if you would have cut the chicken first, you would have had to definitely change. Because we're staying on track and cutting the chicken last, you should be okay. But that's why you get 2 sometimes, or always have use a separate. And remember too, if you haven't done so yet, put in the messages if you're watching it, if there's extra people watching it with you, unless we can see your.
So I'm changing my board out, like she said. I do like to try to keep a board. I like to not use the wooden boards or chopping blocks for meat. because they are more porous. So I recommend using like a silicone mat or a plastic cutting board, not your wood chopping blocks for your meats, just to be, you know, sanitary. Extra precautions. All right, I'm gonna go grab my chicken and give you guys a chance to get that out and get that ready, and then we'll go to that.
Do we go ahead and put the onion and garlic, or no, just put the onion on top of the carrots?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carol, you should have put half your garlic on the vegetables.
Yes, I
and
did.
half for the chicken.
Okay,
And
but
then-
put the onions on there, all of it.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, we all get to have our Julia Child's moment, right?
Yeah, and your chicken looks really good compared to the chicken that some of my people got. Some of them have small, but a chicken cut is a chicken cut regardless of.
Mine is actually pretty small. I think this one's only maybe like 6 pounds. It just might
Oh
look
yeah,
big.
ours are much smaller. But that's okay.
All right, we ready to play with our birds? All right, so the biggest thing to keep in mind when you're working with meats and when you're working with bone-in products is you can't cut through the bone without like the proper tools. So we have to find those joints and we have to cut through the joints, that cartilage, and you'll see it when we get in there. What I typically like to start with are the wings, and I'm gonna turn the bird over because I like to work from the backside on the wings. So you're just going to kind of find where that wing knuckle is. You can kind of feel that bone, feel that joint in there. It'll just feel like a knuckle, right? So you just take your knife in and you start cutting in, and then you can find it. You see this little white part if I'm close enough.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you a minute?
Uh-huh.
We're still trying to get our chickens out of the bags.
No problem, no problem.
Okay, hold on a second.
You're fine.
Never show us.
Hey, Carol, can you remute yourself?
Yes. I thought.
Thank you.
All right, are we ready? So you're looking for that knuckle, that white joint. And once you find that, you can take your knife and just cut right through that. And that's going to remove that wing from the body of the chicken. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Notice the whole time I'm working with the chicken, I'm moving the chicken. I'm always taking my knife down and away from me. So the same thing, you just kind of cut in where you feel like that joint might be. And then you can find that white knuckle right there, that white knuckle, and that's what you're going to cut between is those joints. So you're always looking for that white part. That's what you look for. When you see that knuckle, that's what you cut in between. And that will have removed both wings from the chicken. Then you're going to flip your bird back over top, and you're going to have the breast facing up and the legs facing towards you. Andrea, you got it. You're getting there. There you go. So yeah, we're going to turn the bird around and you're going to have the breast up and the legs facing towards you. All right. Now, you have, just like with a turkey, this is kind of the same way with a turkey. You've got this like skin cavity right here, right? You've got the skin holding and keeping kind of the leg in between. All we're going to do is just cut into the skin. We're not cutting any meat. You're just cutting into the skin and opening up that leg, like so that you can see in between the leg and the breast. So I haven't cut anything. Now I'm just kind of opening it up. So all I did was just cut the skin right there in between the leg and the breast. Once you have opened that up, what I do is I will take my hand up underneath the thigh and the leg, and I'll pop that joint up so I know exactly where to cut. You can basically just pop up that joint. Then I can take my knife and just cut right around that joint, which would remove my thigh and my leg off of the chicken. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm right-handed, so then I'll flip it around so that I can get into the other side. I just cut into that fat, and then I take and basically just open it up. That way that knuckle pops out, that joint there, and then you can just run your knife right around that joint. If you're hitting bone, then you've gotten into the backbone, okay? So you want to cut right between that joint and the backbone to remove that other leg and thigh off of the chicken.
I see a lot of people working and a lot of people smiling, so.
Is that good? I hope. So what you're going to be left with is you've got the backbone, right, attached to the two breasts. And so we have the two breasts here left. Now, if it's kind of wonky and not working for you, you can try to take that backbone off. But what I typically do at this point is we're just going to go straight down the breastbone to remove each breast off of the bone. So you just make a slice into the middle of that breast, and you're going to find that breast.
Yeah, Allison, give everybody just a couple seconds to catch up.
Okay.
I see some legs still coming off. And some
Okay, no problem.
And I don't want them to miss what you're doing next.
No problem.
Okay, I think we're pretty close. There might be a few, but if a few is still taking off the other leg, watch Allison so you know what you're doing with the breast. And there was a comment on any tips for containing the blood, fluid, and keeping the area clean.
I try to drain off as much of that into the trash, like when I take it out of the bag, as possible. So I don't really have a lot of that happening here because I try to drain that off before I put it on the board. All right, so you're going to cut into that breastbone. You will either end up on the left side or the right side of the breastbone. And so don't worry about which side's first. Just when you cut in, you'll know. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to stay with that stroke. So I'm just basically just taking my knife and just pulling that chicken breast. See, I'm just pulling that chicken breast like right off of the breastbone. And I got a little, I just noticed I got a little piece of that wishbone in there. If you do that, you just can cut around that. Sometimes I cut into that. And then you just pull that out. But basically, you're just going to take that knife right down that breastbone, and then you just pull that chicken back, and then you just keep following that stroke with your knife to pull that chicken off of the breast, off of the bone. This is why a sharp knife comes in really handy. It's when you really want a sharp knife. Because when you're working with fat and you're trying to cut through some of these slimier parts, a sharp knife is your best friend. And then some of you, I've always shown this, did not realize that the chicken tender is actually a thing. But if you turn that breast over, once you've cut it off, you'll see this little lobe right at the bottom of your breast. And that is the actual chicken tender. It's the most tender part. It's underneath that chicken breast on the inside. So here's my chicken breast. If I turn that over, you'll see that little part there that's almost wants to pull itself, like separate off. And that's your little chicken tenders. So at this point, you should have 2 chicken tenders, 2 chicken breasts, and next we are going to separate the thigh and the leg, but I'll give you a chance to get those, to get there.
Do you have any tips or tricks for like using like the leftovers for stock or anything like that?
Absolutely. You can save those chicken backs. You know, if you work with whole chickens, keep those in the freezer. Keep those together. And then when you have about maybe say 4 to 6 of those backs, you can keep those in a stock pot with some of those celery scraps and onions and carrots, and let that cook with some, you know, bay leaves and peppercorns and fresh herbs. And you can make a delicious chicken stock just with the backs. All right, this is probably my newest tip. A lot of times when I would separate the thigh and the chicken leg, I would go on the outside of the chicken, and you can see where the thigh is a little fattier than the leg, and you can see kind of that line between them. But if you turn it over the back side, you'll see there is a line running between the two on the back side. It's almost like a little fat line, right? That's where your joint is. So if you lay it down and you look right there, most oftentimes you should be able to just cut straight through to separate your thigh and your leg. And I find it a lot easier to do it by looking from the back side, right where that, right there where you see that fat separation between the two. You should be able to cut right through that and find your joint. And that separates your thigh and your leg. So that gives you 2 more pieces. And the same thing, I'm not going to have us do this, but if you were wanting to cut into chicken wings, you would just find those joints to cut through, you know, the drumstick and the wing on your chicken wings, but we're going to keep those together for this. All right, so at this point, and you guys are still working, that's fine. I'm just going to show you, I'm just taking the chicken and I'm just laying it over top of those vegetables at this point on our sheet tray. I'm going to take our potatoes and kind of add that in around the chicken. So we got the potatoes, the chicken. Now we're just going to sprinkle with that garlic all over everything. Am I going too fast, Kenna?
I think we're doing okay.
All right. Then I'm just taking those lemon slices right over the top of our chicken. And if you have salt and pepper, again, you're just going to sprinkle everything with salt and pepper.
I do see a couple people still sectioning chicken. Just let you know.
Okay, I'll go back over it. And be generous. Be generous with your salt and pepper. It's what's going to be our main flavor component here. And then if you have those fresh herbs, have that thyme, just kind of strip those thyme leaves off of the stalk and just add that on for additional flavor. If not, use some of your fresh dried herbs. You could add dried Italian seasoning to this, or dried thyme, or sage, whatever herbs that you like, or whatever seasoning. If you've got a favorite seasoning blend, you know, just sprinkle it on top of this.
So all of you should have got some thyme in your bag because that was on your list. So basically, if you listen to Allison, you're going to take that thyme, and if you look at thyme, it looks like it has little pieces of hair, maybe, kind of, the way it's made. You're just going to like run your fingers down the stem and pull that off. And if you just do that over top of your lemons or over top of your meat and your vegetables, that's going to add that fresh herb flavoring to it. That's what she was talking about, like stripping it off the spine or that stem.
So that's what I've got there. Some lemon, some chicken, the potatoes. You got those veggies in there. And then again, what she's saying, if you want to remove it from the stem, if the leaves are pointing up, you just you go the reverse direction that the leaves are pointing, and that would strip those. And if you want, just throw the whole thing on top because it's still going to infuse the flavor, and then you can just pick it off after you bake it.
I have no idea where this joint is. I can feel it in this chicken. I had a hard time with the wing too, but it's like, I mean, I can see it. I can see a bone, and I'm just like really butchering this chicken here. But I cannot.
Hold it up for me.
Can you see it?
Uh-huh.
Like,
So
I see the white.
Yeah. So just feel your way either one way or the other. Just feel your way with your knife down one side or the other.
I'm about to lose an AirPod here.
So you should be able to feel with your knife cutting in. So if it's cutting bone, you're there.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. One of my AirPods fell out, so I didn't know if I could still hear it. So it's still cut. It's hard.
Move it further down towards the leg.
I don't think it wants to cut.
Don't feel alone. I bent mine backwards until I just kept doing it. And then
I mean, I can see the separation here. There's one here, and there's one here, but it doesn't want to cut it.
Yeah, you need to go further up then. You're probably too far down on the bone or too far down on the leg. You just kind of have to feel with your, like your cut, what you're doing right there is you're trying to cut through the knuckle. So you need to move up or down. Like it should not be difficult once you find that separation between the joint. So then just try to move up.
Quick question. Is this chicken supposed to have skin on it still?
Mine does. Yes, it has the skin
Like
on.
mine has like an excessive amount of skin.
Yeah, if you want to remove the
So it's
skin,
fine?
you can. Yeah, so
Well, I don't
if
know.
you
It
have-
might be a good thing. So
you haven't
okay.
separated. You haven't separated your leg and thigh. Did you want to cut through that?
That's next.
Okay, so flip it
Okay.
over.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So I figured it out, but I think it's just that I don't know if maybe my hands are just too chickeny or if my knife's not, because I can see straight through. Like that's this bone and this is this bone. There's cartilage in between. You know, this is cartilage, I think.
Yeah, you should be able to just take your knife and cut straight down through that.
So I'm like, I know this is, but it doesn't want to cut. See, maybe I'll go wash and dry my hands. We'll try again.
Yeah. So just like right here, when you find that joint, you still have to apply some pressure, but you should be able to cut, you know, through it.
And keep in mind, it's not something that's going to come easy to you the first time. You're all gonna struggle with it if you haven't done it. Allison's done it a lot. She makes it look easy. She makes it look easy when the FCS agents were doing it, but it is that feel, and you get that feel by practice. And if you don't get it, then you cut through the bone. You know, that's what happens.
It's still gonna taste great. And then the final thing on the chicken dish, what I would do is I would just go with a little bit of olive oil, you know, just right over the top of that chicken and those vegetables. All right. So that would just be to kind of give it a little oil for the vegetables themselves, but the chicken's going to release some juice. And that's what you should end up with. We've got chicken pieces. We've got lemon on top that will add that flavor. You add the sprinkling of the fresh herbs, and you'll have that nice crispy potatoes and those cooked veggies. I would go about 45 minutes in the oven at 375, maybe 35. It just depends on how thick some of those pieces are. And the way to tell is if you have a thermometer, a digital thermometer, you can temp the chicken to 165 with a digital thermometer if the chicken's reading 165 or higher. The other way to tell is if your juices are clear. If you poke into it and you've got nice clear juices coming through, then your chicken's fully cooked. But that's a good dinner in my opinion.
Now,
Allison?
if someone did not want to cook this tonight, could they just have it in the pan in the refrigerator? Is that okay?
Absolutely. Just wrap it in plastic wrap, have it in your fridge, and then you can just pop that in the oven tomorrow night for dinner and go about 40 minutes to 45 minutes, and you should be good to go. You've cut the cook time down on the chicken dramatically. If you had a whole chicken, you would be cooking that for at least an hour, right? But you've cut the cook time down because we broke that chicken down into those pieces. So they're going to cook a little bit faster.
Thank you so much. Mine is in the oven now. It was 325, correct?
375.
375. Thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Do you cover the chicken?
I'm sorry?
Do you cover the chicken with anything? Foil?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't because I want that skin to try to crisp up a little bit. So that's why I would leave it open and just let it cook and let those juices work in the vegetables. So no, I would leave it uncovered.
Okay, thank you.
When did you put the potatoes on?
I'm sorry?
I think she
When
asked,
did you put the potatoes in?
So I just sprinkled the potatoes kind of in between the pieces of chicken, like the strips of potatoes. I just sprinkled, you know, I just kind of laid those around on top of the other vegetables in between the chicken.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And remember, if you're not cooking it tonight, leave your potatoes in the cold water.
Yes, thank you.
Add them tomorrow when you're ready to cook it.
I think I might have put too many potatoes on there because I've got it covered with potatoes.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Totally
Okay.
fine. Yeah, just lay the chicken on top of the potatoes. I promise you, they're going to taste great.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're wrapping it up. So I want.
Yeah, I saw a question. You do not have to cover the potatoes overnight. As long as they're submerged in water, they don't have to be covered. And then if you don't cook them tomorrow, just change the water and then put them back in your fridge. Yeah.
I tried to do a chat to you, to everyone, but it seems to be going privately. But this was wonderful. Thank you very much. I learned a lot. And don't know that I don't know how good I'll be, but I'm going to try and put all that into practice, everything I can remember.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I hope that the packet helps too, because it does cover a lot of everything that we went over. So reading it and then having done it hands-on, I think will help, you know, with memory. And again, it does take practice, and it's not something I would expect you to just master in one night.
Nothing at all.
All right. Remember to, if you have not done so, put
No, I'm
message
happy.
in the chat.
Lisa, I enjoy doing this with you. This is our thing. It ain't cook class.
Attended.
And Lord knows I still am never going to cook, but you know.
And Kim, we're hearing everything you're saying.
Oh no!
That's okay.
That is true.
I'll come find you, and I'll make sure I teach you how to cook.
There you go. I keep trying. Lisa's
Thank
working
you all
on
so
it too.
much. Bye.
Yeah. But I want you to help me thank Allison. I will send an email out with the link of the recording, and
I'm going to try to get you a recipe of that too, so that you can, or something similar, so that you can duplicate that later.
okay, perfect. And hopefully you've enjoyed everything you learned tonight. Be watching. You know how extension is. Somewhere down the line, you're going to get a follow-up evaluation to fill out. So we have some impact from everything Allison has taught us this evening. So I'm going to unmute everybody so everybody can tell her thank you.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah. So
Thank
everybody
you.
say thank you to her.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Allison.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Denise and I didn't kill each other. Look at our fingers.
That's good.
Bye.
Good to know.
Bye.
All right.
Teach
Thank
Dawn
you,
to cook
guys.
next.
Thank you.